In the cold expanse of the galaxy, amidst stars that twinkled like diamonds in the inky blackness, the war between the human forces and the Xirans had reached its breaking point. The Xirans were a proud and ancient race, known for their ruthlessness in battle, their vast fleets, and their cunning strategies. For centuries, the two factions had fought tooth and nail, but a fragile peace had hung in the balance for years. That is, until the Xirans made a bold move that threatened to tip the scales. The battle on the planet Vertil had been a bloodbath. The humans, aided by their allies, fought valiantly, but the Xirans had managed to turn the tide with their superior tactics. Among the soldiers on the front lines, there was one Xiran warrior whose name struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest humans. His name was Kallor, a leader among his people, feared and respected by all. Kallor's power was unmatched on the battlefield. His skill with a blade was legendary, and his ruthlessness in combat had made him a living nightmare for the human forces. But this time, something unexpected happened. Kallor's arrogance, his overconfidence, led him into a situation he had not prepared for. Trapped behind enemy lines during the final moments of the battle, Kallor was grievously injured, struck by a human sniper's bullet. The shot shattered his spine, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. He fell to the ground, unable to move, and his once invincible form was now as vulnerable as any other. The battlefield was littered with the bodies of his fallen comrades, and for the first time in his life, Kallor was at the mercy of his enemies. As he lay there, gasping for breath, surrounded by the wreckage of the battlefield, he heard the footsteps of the advancing human soldiers. They had come for the kill, to finish the job. But as they approached, Kallor saw something that he had never expected. The humans paused. They looked at him, and in their eyes, there was no fear, only disdain and pity. They knew he was finished. Even the medics, who had been trained to save lives no matter the circumstances, turned their backs on him. The humans were taught to fight with honor, but this was not a situation they could fix. Kallor was as good as dead in their eyes. In the midst of the crowd, one soldier stood out. His name was Captain Ethan Turner, a man of few words. Turner was a seasoned veteran of many battles, a soldier who had witnessed the horrors of war but had never lost his humanity. He had seen soldiers fall on both sides, but he had never been one to turn his back on anyone, no matter the enemy. As the other soldiers discussed how best to dispose of the paralyzed Xiran warrior, Turner moved forward. He could hear the murmurs of his fellow soldiers, but he ignored them. Kallor had been a monster on the battlefield, but now he was a man in need. The fact that he was an enemy didn't change the simple truth that Turner knew all too well. No one deserved to die like this, alone and helpless. "You're going to leave him to die?" Turner asked, his voice low but firm. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Some were eager to get the mission over with. Others were conflicted, but none of them were willing to risk their lives for the fallen Xiran. "He's a threat to us, Turner," one of them replied. "We have to be sure he doesn't recover. That's the way of war." But Turner was resolute. "This isn't the way I was trained. I won't leave him to die like an animal." Without another word, Turner approached Kallor, who looked up at him, his golden eyes filled with disbelief. You'd help me?" Kallor's voice was weak, strained, but there was a flicker of pride in his words. "I don't believe in leaving anyone behind, not even someone like you," Turner said, crouching beside him. "We're all soldiers here. You're hurt, and I won't just let you die." There was a long pause as the two men, one human, one Xiran, locked eyes. In that moment, something shifted between them. Kallor, the fearsome warrior, realized that this human soldier was not acting out of pity, but out of a sense of honor that transcended the boundaries of their conflict. Turner worked quickly, using his medkit to stabilize Kallor. He applied a makeshift brace to Kallor's back and injected him with painkillers. "I'm not a doctor," Turner muttered. "But this will keep you alive until we can get you to a proper facility." The other soldiers watched in stunned silence. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. A human soldier, the enemy of the Xirans, was saving their greatest threat. Turner knew the risks he was taking. Kallor could have killed him with a single blow, but in that moment, the paralyzed warrior was no longer the killer, and Turner was no longer the enemy. "We don't have much time," Turner said, his voice urgent. "You need to come with me. I won't leave you here to die." Kallor nodded, though he could hardly believe what was happening. This was not the way of the Xirans. This was not how their enemies had treated them. But in Turner he saw a glimmer of something different, something more than just a soldier. With Turner's help, Kallor was carefully lifted onto a transport shuttle. The human soldiers, though uncomfortable, understood that Turner was doing what he thought was right. They couldn't deny the bond that had formed between the two warriors, however strange it might have been. As they flew away from the wreckage of the battlefield, Kallor lay back in his seat, his mind reeling. He had been an unstoppable force, feared by his enemies, but now he was at the mercy of a human soldier, a soldier who had chosen to save him instead of finish him off. Kallor's pride and arrogance had been stripped away, and for the first time in years, he felt vulnerable. "Why did you help me?" Kallor asked, his voice weak but filled with curiosity. Turner glanced at him, his expression grim but resolute. "Because you were a warrior, and I don't leave warriors behind, no matter who they fight for." Kallor took a long breath, his golden eyes now filled with something else, a new understanding. "I had thought all humans were the same, driven by hatred and greed. But you're different." Turner simply nodded. "We all have our reasons for fighting. Some fight for power, some for survival, and others fight for honor. I choose honor, Kallor. I believe that's what sets us apart." As the shuttle continued its journey to a medical facility, Kallor's thoughts began to change. He had been brought to the brink of death, but in this human soldier, he saw the possibility of something else, something that could break the cycle of violence and hatred. Turner had shown him mercy, and in that moment, Kallor understood that mercy had the power to change the course of the war. When they arrived at the medical facility, Kallor was treated by the humans, and though he could no longer fight as he once had, he found something even more powerful: respect for the human soldier who had saved him. And so, the war continued, but Kallor, the once feared Xiran warrior, now stood at a crossroads. He could continue the fight for his people, but he now knew there was another way, a way that was paved with honor, mercy, and the understanding that even the most unlikely of enemies could be worthy of saving. As for Captain Ethan Turner, he returned to his squad, but the memory of Kallor, the alien warrior he had saved, stayed with him. In the midst of a galaxy torn apart by war, Turner had discovered the true meaning of heroism, and in doing so, had changed the fate of an enemy forever.